Hey guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. It's January 14th, 2023. Hard to believe Christmas is already in the rearview mirror and chilly in the Northeast. And I'm unfortunately, as you can see, my partner Steve, the other Mono, is not with us, still in recovery mode, doing okay. And again, he continues to send his thanks and gratitude to all our loyal listeners who, I'm sure they miss him too. They got to see my mug the whole show. But we got our producer, Rob, of course, always in the background if needed. And let's just jump right into it. So, our monologue this week, I guess my monologue is it's about hockey. So we're going to get into football. We're going to get into the college football, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. But hockey, and I hope more and more of our loyal listeners are starting to appreciate the sport of hockey. And first of all, I wanted to mention our monologue is always sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York, and I hope they're doing well up there. It's probably cold. Um, but anyway, I had an opportunity, and I've talked about this before about the cost of going to sporting events is almost prohibitive for at least for a family of four, right? But I did go to Madison Square Garden to see the Rangers play the other night, had an opportunity, and I did go with my partner, Steve, and we had an unbelievably great time. But it's very, very expensive. I mean, just parking and all this kind of stuff, it just adds up to a point where it's a problem for people to go. But apparently, it wasn't a problem for the 18,000 fans were there for the Dallas Stars game. And like I said, we had an opportunity, and I've always said that winning the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sports. I mean, the season is so long, but I had an opportunity to sit right against the glass, right on the ice, and it gives you an absolute appreciation for the toughness of these guys, and they just battle all game long, slamming into boards, and it was really awesome to see. But like I said, the cost of going to a game, it's so high, and that's why I don't go to many games anymore, because it costs a lot of money to do that. But it was such an awesome time, and it was turned out to be a great, great game. It was 1-0 Dallas Stars the whole time, and Rangers scored with 1 second left in the game to send it to overtime, and they won the game. But if you're not into hockey, you should be, because it's really a great, great sport and so difficult. And these guys are just absolute warriors, and it was a great experience. And I thank Steve's friend Jerry for providing us with those tickets, and it just was a great time. And like I said, if you're not into hockey, you should be, because it's a great sport. So let's jump right into it, and let's start off. We know it's NFL Wild Card Weekend, which is great, and can't wait. And we'll go watch the Giants play tomorrow. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I just first of all wanted to bring up the end of the college football season. And to all the fans that were watching the game, I could see it was an absolute annihilation of Georgia over TCU. But that doesn't diminish TCU's run that they had, and they beat Michigan to get there, and they just ran up against the team which Steve and I and Rob have talked about since the beginning of college football season, that this team looked unbeatable, and it turns out that they were. But one thing I wanted to bring up was this quarterback, Stetson Bennett. And you know what? I mean, he's a small guy. I don't know if this will translate into the National Football League, because it's a kind of a different game than it was when shorter quarterbacks like Fran Tarkenton and Pat Hayden played the game. But I couldn't have been more impressed with this kid. He dreamed about being the quarterback and winning a national championship at Georgia. And not only did he win one, he won back to back. And this is an unbelievable story. But watching him, the confidence that he had, and the ability to throw footballs like 30 yards right on the money with precision, accuracy, and it really was impressive to see that he was the leader of that team. And listen, Georgia is loaded with explosive talent, and Jalen Carter could possibly be the first pick in the NFL draft. And I was watching him very, very closely because I watched him play against Ohio State, and I'm going to bring up this gentleman in a minute. I don't see him as the number one pick. I mean, there's so much talent around him. I think that makes him look better than he really is. But he's going to probably be a top 5 draft pick. But as we know, drafting like a defensive lineman in the NFL, it's a hit or miss proposition, right? The first couple of picks in the draft will be quarterbacks, most likely Bryce Young. Next year will be Caleb Williams, first pick in the draft. So, but it really was impressive. And, we're seeing something in college football that we haven't seen in a long time. And this is, complete dominance. And Kirby Smart gets all the credit in the world. And, we know Alabama wasn't in the mix, but, he's a Nick Saban disciple, and he really has control of that team. And they win the national championship in an absolute rout on Monday night. And yet he's focused on next year. So, I mean, we talk about the top 3 coaches in NCAA football. And of course, you have to start and end with Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney. But Kirby Smart is now in the mix because he is that kind of a coach that, he can't be satisfied with the first one he won. So he came back and won his second one. And he's not satisfied with that. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could win a third one. And I wanted to bring up in relating to this because, Luke Wypler, who we've talked about time and time again, St. Joe's former player and 2-year starter for Ohio State, which is impressive upon itself. And, we saw some news this week, and we were hoping to have Luke on, but he's a little busy with what he's got going on. But he declared for the NFL draft. And you know what? This kid is just, we've talked about him time and time again, what a great kid he is. This is what kids aspire to, right? You work hard. You want to be the Stetson Bennett's. You want to be the Luke Wyplers and move on to the ultimate level of football, which is the National Football League. And he thinks he's ready. It looks like he's ready. He took care of Jalen Carter, the potential top 5 pick. I don't want to say easily, but he really impressed. And we wish Luke and his dad, Bobby, all the best in this. And you know what? Maybe if it all works out, it would be great. Because the Giants could use an offensive lineman who go with their bookend tackles. And that would be a Cinderella story, very similar to Stetson Bennett. Playing in New Jersey, growing up in New Jersey, playing for a powerhouse team in college football, amazing. And I wish Luke all the best, and I can't wait to have him on the show and talk about the whole experience of, leaving college early to go to the National Football League, where that's a tough task to ask for anybody. But I think he's ready for that opportunity, and we wish him all the best. But again, congratulations to Georgia on their second national championship. It was a rout. I expected TCU to at least keep it close, but you got to give them credit too. They beat Michigan to get there, but they ran up against a team that was just almost impossible to beat, and that's how it proved out. So anyway, college football is over, and next up we'll be talking about the NFL draft, right? Which is almost a 12-month process, right? Who's the speculation and And we did a show last year on the NFL draft. We'll absolutely do another show this year. And Rob and his buddies had us on as Mono and Mono as guests on the NFL draft. And I think this year will be a Sports with Mono and Mono draft. And we'll do it live on draft night. Looking forward to that. It's always good. So do your homework because nobody gets the picks right. And there's always a surprise thrown in, guys that unexpected, like the Daniel Jones kind of guy. But that's exciting. It was great to see, and congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs, and best of luck to Luke. So it's wild card weekend. This is one of the great weekends for NFL fans, right? This is when games mean something, right? Win or go home. And there's 6 games today. And let's first start talking about the NFL. And we brought it up last week about, this was Black Monday and there was some firings. And I actually brought up, I think Lovie Smith had to be first on the list. And he was. Because I don't know what's happened down there. It just didn't seem like his heart was in it. And so he gets fired. Another one, Cliff Kingsbury, Cardinals quarterback. And my feelings on the Cardinals and this whole Kyler Murray, they paid him all this money. I just don't see that panning out. But, Kingsbury had 4 years there, and there was a lot of high aspirations for the Cardinals to be a team that would compete, for a Super Bowl championship, and it completely went south on them. I don't know if that's all on Kingsbury or, the fact that, Kyler Murray, I don't think has lived up to the expectations that people had of him. And now he's injured, and you don't know how an injury can go, whether it lingers or doesn't linger. But he got fired as well. And I also talked about last week, right, for a potential Black Monday, the Jets collapse. And the New York Jets, right, started off, they was 7-4, and everybody was all on board, and they're going to the playoffs regardless, and they didn't. They completely collapsed, and somebody had to take the fall for it. And I thought it should have been Robert Saleh, but it wasn't. It ends up being Mike LaFleur, offensive coordinator, which again, now, probably rightfully so. I just don't, the whole quarterback situation for the Jets is kind of crazy with Zach Wilson and Mike White and whatever. So you got to see what's going to happen there. They got to bring somebody in because Robert Saleh has no connection to the offense. So he's got to bring somebody in that could either work with Zach Wilson, work with Mike White, make them the commitment. But I don't think so. Obviously, Joe Flacco won't be there, and his days are over. But you got to think. I think there's a couple of possibilities that the Jets might look at, right? And that's Derek Carr, because it was Black Monday, but he got told last week that he was not part of this team going forward. I've been pretty steadfast in my position that Derek Carr has great numbers, but so did Phillip Rivers, but they didn't win the games that they were supposed to win. So he's going to be a free agent, and that's going to be a possibility for the Jets. It could turn out to be getting a Brett Favre at the end of his career, and that didn't work out. We've seen this time and time again with the Jets, and whether or not Zach Wilson is part of this master plan for the Jets to get back into prominence. They got the longest playoff drought in the NFL streak going, and crazy, but we'll see how that goes. So there's going to be some new coaches in the league, and I wanted to give a shout out to Mike Tomlin, right? Pittsburgh started out the season pretty, lackluster or whatever, and it could have been, you were trying to ease in Kenny Pickett as your future franchise quarterback, and I think he really matured throughout the season. And Mike Tomlin, rallied this team back to a 9-8 record, didn't make the playoffs, but again, has never had a losing season in Pittsburgh, and that's pretty impressive. So, a lot of things going on with the National Football League, and with the wild card today, let's bring up that the Hamlin situation. Really, Damar Hamlin has completely almost recovered from this tragic thing we had to witness on Monday Night Football. And you know what? It's a feel good story because it could have gone the other way, and it would have been tragic and historic for the NFL. And so happy for him and the Buffalo Bills fans that you know they rallied back from something that was beyond the game of football. It was more about life. And it turned out to be an absolute great story. We brought it up on the show. You got to give the credit to the medical staff that was on that field, and they've been rightfully honored. And he at the University of Cincinnati Hospital, those guys took it, and he's going to be okay. Whether he plays football again is probably unlikely. But what a great story, and what a great motivational tool for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they genuinely were crushed by this event that they had to witness with their teammates. But they got through it, and the NFL got through it. And so happy for him and his recovery. So 2 shout outs to Damar Hamlin. Congratulations on rallying. I think there was the spirit of your teammates that brought you back. And you know what? You can sit and watch the game today, and tomorrow it's great story, and I'm just so happy it turned out the way that it did. So it's kind of funny. There's 6 games this weekend, right? 2 of them today, 4 of them tomorrow, or 3 tomorrow, and a Monday Night Football game. So let's talk about the wild card. There's a lot of moving parts when we look at the quarterbacks, right? Daniel Jones, this is his moment, and I know a lot of people are picking the Giants, and I can't speak highly enough of the job that Brian Daboll has done. Something that we thought maybe Robert Saleh was going to bring to the Jets, and he hasn't. But Daboll is a proven commodity, and he can develop quarterbacks, and I think he's done an unbelievable job for Daniel Jones. So, this is a big test for him. Obviously, it's a contract year, and this is going to decide whether or not he is the future quarterback of the New York Giants. And I hope so, because I like him. So they go to Minnesota for the games, and we'll talk about our picks in a minute. But a lot of moving parts, right? Dallas is taking on Tampa Bay. And interesting fact, Tom Brady has never lost to the Dallas Cowboys, which seems unbelievable that he's only played them 7 times in his career. So that'll factor into my picks as well. And like I said, the whole question mark around Lamar Jackson, is he hurt? Is he not hurt? Is this a stance he's trying to make for leverage for his new contract? And you know what? I don't know the answer. I'd like to think that he wants to be out there in the playoffs. He's only won 1 playoff game in his entire career, which is almost a little hard to believe, but that's a fact. So I don't know how that's going to go for them. I think their season's going to be over today, and I'll bring that up. But a lot of young quarterbacks, and you know what? Now we got Josh Allen, we got Joe Burrow, and these guys. These are the new, the face of the position of quarterback in the NFL, and these guys are awesome, and it's going to be great. It's a weekend for sports and NFL fans in particular. That you get 6 games over the next couple of days, and this is on the road to the Super Bowl. And as much as we bash the NFL, and rightfully so, about Roger Goodell and the policies and methodologies that he's put on. It's all about money, you know what? But for a football fan, this is pretty exciting time. So I wanted to apologize from last week. We got so caught up in other stuff, we actually forgot to put our pick threes for the week. But I did have my picks, and in full disclosure, I'm going to give those to you. I was 2-1 last week. Um, the team that I thought, had more of a desire to win was Tennessee, and they came up short again. They were kind of disappointing all year, but I'm a big Mike Vrabel fan. But they lost, so I was 2-1. Rob's Pittsburgh guy, took care of Cleveland. Cleveland's an absolute mess. And Arizona and San Francisco and the whole Brock Purdy thing. That's another rookie quarterback starting in the wild card weekend too. So going to be a great bunch of games. I'm not sure how competitive they're going to be. So instead of our pick three for this week, I'm going to give you my pick six because there's 6 games. And the first, obviously there's 2 games today, Seattle, San Francisco. I think the weather is going to kind of be a mess, so that could keep the game closer. But San Francisco is a much better team. The addition of Christian McCaffrey has been, wow, a season changer, I think. That was a missing component that San Francisco didn't have. And, can this Brock Purdy thing continue, right? The last pick in the draft, and he's done everything he's supposed to do. So I think it's great. And I think they're a much more talented team. Seattle, the whole Geno Smith, got to give him credit. Played a great season, but I just don't think they have enough to beat San Francisco. So I'm going with the Niners. And again, I think the weather is going to be a little suspect, but we'll see how that goes. Second game today is the Chargers and Jacksonville Jaguars. And I must say, Trevor Lawrence is starting to develop into the quarterback that was expected of him, the number 1 pick in the draft. I haven't been so sure, but I like what he's done lately. And I'm not going to rule this out. I'm actually going to go. I know Justin Herbert is an up-and-comer. He's a great quarterback and, future of that team, but they're going to be missing Mike Williams today. And I think, there seems to be a lot of obvious picks for the 6 games this week, but I'm going to go for the upset here. I'm going to take Jacksonville to beat the Chargers today in the second of the wild card games today. And I know a lot of people are saying, but the Chargers have a lot of talent, and Austin Eckler is a good running back and whatnot. But I think this is developed into a great story, getting past the whole Urban Meyer fiasco in Jacksonville. And that's going to be one of my surprise picks for the weekend. So I'm taking Jacksonville. And let's go into the other 4 games, right? Miami and Buffalo. And we talked about the whole Damar Hamlin motivation thing. But Buffalo is a much more talented team. And you got to give some thought to this Tua situation in Miami. They just played an ugly game against the Jets in the finale. And Skylar Thompson, listen, I'm pulling for the kid to play good, but that's asking an awful lot for a 3rd-string quarterback to beat the Buffalo Bills, and I just don't think that's going to happen. Again, I don't cover point spreads when we talk. We're talking about winning the football game, and I like Buffalo to go easily over the Miami Dolphins. So that seems to be an easy pick for me. But the Giants at Minnesota, and I mentioned before, a lot of people are picking the Giants to go into Minnesota. And I was talking with a Viking fan, and they see it the same way. They go, you know what? It depends on which Kirk Cousins is going to show up for the game. And, he could look great. He could look ridiculous. Very similar to Eli Manning when he was with the Giants. When he looked bad, he looked awful. When he looked good, he looked great and won 2 Super Bowls. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But I'm going to go with Minnesota today. And I know everyone's going to say, how could you root against your team or go against your team? This is about sports with mono and mono and being objective, like we take pride in. And I'm hoping that Daniel Jones and Dable win this game. I just think it's a tall task, and Minnesota's been up and down all year. So if they get them on an off day, then the Giants could win the game. But I think this is a big test for Kirk Cousins for let's call it his legacy, if nothing else. But I think he's actually with Justin Jefferson on that field. They could put up a lot of points, and they got not just him, but they got Thielen. They got this tight end now, Hawkinson. They got a good running game. So they got a lot of components that the Giants have to stop. No question, Brian Dable's going to have this team prepared, and they're not going to be blown out of Minneapolis, but it's going to be a close game. But from a business perspective, I think the Vikings are a notch above the Giants at this point in the season. And I think the Giants look promising going forward. Great test. If they move on, couldn't be more psyched to catch them watching next week and watching Daniel Jones again. But I'm going to go with Minnesota. Baltimore at Cincinnati. And again, mentioned that Lamar Jackson is not going to be the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, which is, I don't know the situation, what's going on there, but it doesn't seem, obviously, I don't think he's going to be back with Baltimore, whether it's his choice or John Harbaugh's choice, but it looks like that's run its course. Like I said, I hope that he actually is, that type of character quarterback that says, if I could be there, I would be. I can't. So I think I could only be a detriment to our team, but that puts the onus on a young quarterback, Tyler Huntley. But I just don't think they have enough to stop Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, who, they've been one of the hottest teams in the league, in the last 10 games of the season. And, they've been to the Super Bowl before, and Joe Burrow seems determined he wants to get back there again. And of course, you're going to have to get through Kansas City and Buffalo and whatever this neutral site thing is, which I think is kind of, that's kind of a bummer. And I'm sure it is for Kansas City Chiefs, because in the NFL, home field means a lot. And, there was an odd situation with the Hamlin and the postponing of the game. So they had to come up with some solution, but I think if you're a Kansas City fan, that's where you wanted to play Buffalo if that's how it's going to match up. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. But I like Cincinnati easy over Baltimore today. And another game, and this is where I miss my partner so dearly because he's obviously, as you know, a Dallas Cowboy loyal fan, and they got to play a road game against an 8-9 team, which seems incredible, right? That they get to host a game. Maybe the NFL needs to look at that, say division winner or not. You're under 500, and Dallas has double-digit wins. They shouldn't have to play on the road, but they are. And the Tom Brady situation. So I did watch the Cowboys last week, and I know, when Dak Prescott doesn't have a game, they keep saying, is this the right guy? He's a solid quarterback. And as a matter of fact, he just passed Troy Aikman on the Dallas Cowboys list for franchise wins, which actually caught me off guard a little bit. I wasn't aware. It seems like Dak Prescott was just a rookie a couple of years ago, but he's been starting, missed a lot of games with an injury. But you know what? As unimpressed as I've been with Tampa Bay all season, and maybe this, Tom Brady thing, but you know what? This guy lives for this. He lives for these big games. And if this was in Dallas, I think I'd be going the other way. But I'm going with Tom Brady to actually knock off the Cowboys at home And whether they go any farther after that is probably, to be determined. But he's 7-0 against Dallas in his career. And you know what? He wants to be 8-0, and I think he's going to rally behind that thought of going undefeated against Dallas in his career. And I think for an 8-9 team, yeah, they could possibly move into the second round. So I'm taking them. So here's a wrap up of my picks, and good luck. And if you have any thoughts about what I brought up about the NFL and my picks, please send us an email at sportswithmanoandmano@gmail.com. So to recap, I'm going with Buffalo, San Francisco, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay. Enjoy the weekend, because it's going to be football and nothing but football, and it's what we NFL and football fans live for. So enjoy, and again, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email and we'll talk about it. One thing I wanted to bring up was I got this reminder, which I didn't need because we're kind of in a period where tennis after the U.S. Open kind of goes into hiatus, but the Australian Open, and Mike Garvey from our Naples branch, our satellite office, texted me this morning and said, don't forget to mention that the Australian Open is. And again, time-wise, this is one of those, if you want to stay up and you're really a tennis fan, you'll be up at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. watching matches. It's, it's good theater. Again, don't know how that's going to pan out, but I wanted to make sure that we mention that because tennis is another sport that Sports with Mano and Mano loves. We love Wimbledon. We love the U.S. Open, and we'll see how that pans out. But not sure the Djokovic situation, whether he's there or there's still any kind of COVID thing. I would think not. Don't know about Rafi. So you got a lot of young talent going on in tennis, and I wanted to make sure that we brought that up. So, folks, let's move into our random points of interest. And, of course, this is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. Time and time again. President Lynch was actually out skiing with my Niagara buddies out in Montana, of all things. Sent me a video of literally a moose sitting outside their back door where they were. I've never been to Montana, but it looked like they were having a good time. And how often you don't see a moose in New Jersey, but hope they had a good time. And thanks for the sponsorship, Mike. So, Rob, one thing behind the curtain I know you're thinking about is the Met fans and this whole Carlos Correa situation. Very, very bizarre. And a lot of discussion going on this week with this guy and his medical history. And, two teams got scared off. And one of those teams was the New York Mets, who, we've talked about time and time again. Money is no object for this franchise, but they started to see that, this could be, a potential, I'm on the hook for $300 million and this guy had a metal plate in his ankle and, he can't perform. It would be fitting because of the Mets bringing in, players that were in their prime. And, we can go back to George Foster. We can go back to Bobby Bonilla. We can go back to all these guys. The Mets are very similar to the Jets. It seems like no matter what they do, even if they have the talent on the field, they just don't come through. And you go, oh, same old Mets. So, I do applaud Steve Cohen for taking the position of saying, listen, we offered you a 10 or 13-year contract and we'd be on the hook for $300 million. But, there are questions here. And apparently we kind of laughed at the Giants when the Mets signed Correa, saying, I don't know what report they were reading, but, there appears to be something there. And Steve Cohen said, you know what? I can't make that commitment. I just can't rely on you to be that missing piece to make this franchise a World Series winner again. So we'll see how that works out. Couple other signings, this guy Nelson Cruz. This guy's been in the league for 19, maybe almost 20 years. Probably end up in the 500 home run club. Signs with the Padres. So I mean, if money is not an issue in Major League Baseball, or in fact, if it is, well, it doesn't seem to be affecting the San Diego Padres because they're trying to buy a championship team and they got pretty close last year. But so they signed somebody, like him and, guys like Brandon Belt, who was a two-time World Series champion with the San Francisco Giants. He left for free agency, signs with the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think this is, what the Toronto Blue Jays know they need to take on Aaron Judge and the Yankees to win the division and ultimately win a World Series. But again, this goes back to the theme that we've talked about, the money that these guys are getting. And look at Carlos Correa. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Yes, he's a very good player, but he's a 279 lifetime hitter. And maybe people think, hey, you know what? Stanton and Donaldson and these guys hit 220, so 279 is great. I don't see it, not for that kind of money. But they're just paying these guys exorbitant amount of money, and the length of the contract is coming into play. And can you really, Aaron Judge signs a 10-year contract. Are we really expecting Aaron Judge to play into his 40s? No. I think what's happening here, this is a situation where the teams are just trying to defer the money over a longer period of time. And, but they are getting, and they do get guaranteed this money, injured or not, $300 million by many, many players. And it's a little crazy. But I know that's a big disappointment for the Met fans. I know they saw this as the missing piece, but it didn't pan out. I don't know what that missing piece is for the Mets, but the Yankees could have used a third baseman too. So they obviously saw the medical report and said, we're not investing this kind of money. It's just too much. So baseball, again, spring training's probably, 2 months away, and it's going to start all over again, 162 game season. Can Aaron Judge repeat the performance he had, which is very high expectations? But for that money, if you're a Yankee fan, yes, that's exactly what you expect. And you expect him to lead that team, regardless of who the third baseman is and the holes that they have to fill. That's what it's all about. If you're going to invest that kind of money, your legacy won't be secured until you win a World Series. So one other random point of interest, and again, this isn't something, a forum that we use on the show, but this whole FTX situation and how it relates to sports is you had guys like Steph Curry and all these big NBA players investing in this cryptocurrency thing, and this Sam Bankman-Fried, and it turned out it was exposed as a little crypto Madoff situation. So, all the sports leagues that were umpires were wearing their logo on it, and they were actually the FTX arena for the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat changed that name. So, I think FTX paid them, these naming rights for the stadiums, and it's a big deal. I mean, you talk about something like SoFi Stadium, and one of the most beautiful stadiums ever built in the United States. So the naming rights mean something, but credit to the Miami Heat for taking that name down, voiding the deal, and they're going to change the name of FTX Stadium to something. I don't know. Again, the highest bidder. But I think it was great to see. But you know what? It was just so funny that all of these sports leagues were so caught up in this. And it's an ugly look for all the sports franchises. People aren't doing their work. So they basically had a Bernie Madoff sponsor, and I'm all major sports. And I'm glad that somebody recognized that this is an ugly scene, and we got to change this. And I don't suspect we're going to see FTX patches on major league umpires in the World Series going forward. So, anyway, so unfortunately, we normally close our show with notable passings, and in this situation this week, there's a bunch of guys. First and foremost, from a sports perspective, former Heisman Trophy winner Charles White passed away, um, 69 years old. I think he's the all-time Pac-12 rushing leader, which that's quite noteworthy. Didn't translate, obviously. We've seen this, before. A Heisman Trophy winner doesn't guarantee you success at the next level in the National Football League. He battled substance abuse for years, but that Heisman Trophy season he had for USC. And as you know, I'm not a USC Pac-12 guy by any stretch, but he did have an unbelievable season in 1979, and I wanted to certainly bring that up because when you lose a sports figure, it's always devastating for the school and the sport itself. But Charles White, he did win the Heisman Trophy. He did deserve that Heisman Trophy, and he'll forever be remembered in USC lore. They've had great running backs, and when you're in a Heisman Trophy and that's in your bookcase, that's something to be proud of. But I wanted to make sure we mentioned him. This is kind of a funny one, not a funny one. I'm just thinking because it's a show we used to watch when we were younger. 8 is Enough. It was horrible. If you watch it now, you'd laugh and say, "How did I possibly waste any time watching this?" But the young kid that played Nicholas, Adam Rich, passed away. He was 54. 54, and we watched him on a TV show when he was, had to be 6 or 7, right? So I just wanted to note that he did pass away, right? And from the world of music, this was a big loss. Jeff Beck passed away at age 78. And when you think about his resume, and I saw a lot of the comments that people made on social media about him, like, we're talking about one of the top 5, if not top 3 guitar players of all time. Yardbirds, he had great success as a solo artist. That's a big loss for the music business because Jeff Beck was a formidable guy, and he passed away, and that's kind of sad. But we're seeing a lot of these guys when you get to 78, right? That's the average age, right? The 74s. But wanted to mention him because I enjoyed his music, and as Bill Coughlin, one of my brother's best friends, brought up, and Bill's a music aficionado, and when he says this was one of the greatest guitar slingers of all time, that's certainly noteworthy on Sports with Mono and Mono from a notable passings perspective. And another big name was Lisa Marie Presley. And as you know, one of the biggest Elvis Presley fans there is, always have been. Was hoping when I was younger, I was turning 14 years old when he passed away, that I had a chance to see him, but I didn't. But his legacy is secured, and his only daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, passed away at the age of 54. And, I don't know if I've ever seen from a perspective of what a father looks like, what a daughter looks like, what a grandson looks like, because the Elvis Presley eyes is just something that's it's really hard to believe. But she's had some problems over her career. When her father passed away, she was only 8 years old. She's the quote unquote sole heir. So I saw a note that says she had money problems, and I said, I don't know how she could possibly have had money problems. but because Graceland and the Elvis Presley legacy just makes millions and millions of dollars. But she suffered a tragic loss with the suicide of her son Brendan, and I wanted to make sure we noted that Lisa Marie passed away, the daughter of the king, and it's sad to see. One other notable passing, and I don't know, maybe a lot of our younger fans don't know who Bachman Turner Overdrive was, but they were a real formidable band back in the 70s. And Robbie Bachman passed away. He was the drummer for BTO, and BTO had a great run. As a very marketable band in that era, and he was 69 years old. His brother Randy was obviously one of the founding members of BTO as well. So he passed away. So I hate when we have to bring up so many people in notable passings, but again, we do it as an honor to them, as the impact that they had in culture and so forth. But we hate that that we had 5 of them this week. That hopefully next week we'll have none. And I just wanted to also bring that up. That one notable that was the Damar Hamlin, and what a great recovery for him, and we're so happy for that. So listen, folks, I really appreciate it, and Steve sends his best wishes, and he will be back with us. He's just on the road to recovery, but we'd love to hear from you and continue. We send a shout out to all of our loyal listeners who week after week are with us, and hopefully we have something good to say, and without you, there wouldn't be us. And I can't state that enough. And I continuously thank you and our sponsors and Rob, our producer, for stepping up and making sure. And again, we're gaining more and more momentum. We're getting a lot of nice feedback from some of our listeners, and we get new listeners week after week. And welcome to the show, and we love having you. And we got a lot of things to talk about week after week. But today is, and tomorrow is wild card weekend. It's a great day for football, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And Rob, thanks for pulling the strings behind the curtain. Steve, get well soon, and we'll catch up to you guys next week. Thanks.